All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our RBT exam practice series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Be sure to check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. As a behavior technician, you must prepare for your sessions as necessary and as required. If you were preparing for your session today, what would be the least appropriate strategy? One of the first items on our task list is arriving and preparing for session and data collection. As a behavior technician, your primary job is going to be implementation of plans and then measurement and gathering of data. So you want to be prepared when you show up. You've got to remember our clients only get a limited amount of time with us. So we want to use that time to the fullest ability, and that requires preparation. So if you're the behavior technician and you're going to prepare for your session today, what would be least appropriate? Now, the key word is least, right? Meaning they might all be okay, but one is going to be the worst out of the four. So let's look at A. Read session notes from the week before and review the treatment plan. That seems like a good strategy, especially if there are other technicians on your team. Understanding what's going on outside your session is very important. And then reviewing the treatment plan ensures that you know what you're going to do when you get there. A seems pretty good. B, prepare the client's learning environment to minimize risk and distraction. Absolutely. Depending on where you provide services or where you have session, you want to make the environment conducive to learning and skill acquisition and behavior reduction. So whatever that looks like is what you should be doing when you get to session. Prepare that environment so that your session goes as smooth as possible. So B is pretty good too. C, arrive without anything planned and then create your plan based on what the client wants to do that day. Now, we should never arrive unprepared. So even if your strategy is to kind of let the client lead, you should still have a plan in place. You should not arrive without anything planned and then figure it out as you go. That is not a good strategy. And then D, bring with you a variety of stimuli that function as reinforcers. Sure, right? The more reinforcers you have, the more options you have, the better, right? We can avoid satiation. If something is not preferred that day, you have options. D would be very strong. So out of all of these, the least appropriate is going to be showing up unprepared. You do not want to arrive without anything planned and then just create as you go. You want to have a plan no matter what. Even if you're letting the child guide, you still want to plan on how that looks. A functional analysis indicates that your client engages in escape behavior when they're asked to demonstrate a new unknown skill. What type of chaining would likely be most effective? Now, this is kind of an interesting question, right? We don't have a lot of information, and all of our interventions should be individualized. But on the exam, when you aren't given a lot of information, you're going to have to draw from what you know about each intervention. So here, we're clearly using some type of behavior chaining. And what we know about the client is that they engage in escape behavior when asked to demonstrate a new unknown skill. So think about what that might look like with a forward chain. With a forward chain, the goal is to teach the first step first and go from there. If your client is going to engage in escape when asked to do that first step, that might be extremely difficult to even get through one step. What we might try, however, is backwards chaining. With backwards chaining, the client doesn't have to do anything until the very last step, which is going to allow escape. So backwards chaining is used sometimes when escape is the function of the behavior, because by the nature of backwards chaining, the last step is performed and then the client escapes. So a backwards chain is a good way to teach clients who engage in a lot of escape behavior, because you're going to help them do most of the chain until the very end. And then as soon as they engage in that final response, they're free. Total task chaining would probably be the worst, since they would have to do the entire chain by themselves. And then we're not at a behavior chain interruption strategy yet. A behavior chain interruption strategy comes after the essential steps are mastered, and then we intentionally interrupt the chain in order to evoke novel behaviors. We're just starting here. We're just starting the chain. We're not at the point of interrupting quite yet. So if we want to try to reduce the amount of escape and reduce the opportunity for escape, we'd likely want to try backwards chaining, where we're going to help with all of the steps and only require the client to complete that final step, and then escape as part of the reinforcement. You normally get to the library right at 9 a.m. so you can get a full day of work done. When you get there on Sunday, however, you see the library doesn't open until 11 a.m. You start showing up on Sundays at 11 a.m. instead. Why? So let's be careful here because we have a couple different things going on. Question just says why. And why are you showing up on Sundays at 11 a.m.? So two different things here, right? When you get to the library at 9 a.m., it's closed on Sundays, right? And so typically when you get to the library at 9 a.m., reinforcement's available. On Sunday, however, that reinforcement is withheld. So showing up to the library at 9 a.m. on Sunday is on extinction. But what we're looking at is your behavior of going on Sundays now at 11 a.m. In other words, something's changed your behavior because now instead of 9 a.m. on Sunday, you're going at 11 a.m. So if your behavior changes in the future and starts to increase, what's happening? Well, you're now receiving reinforcement. So when do you not receive reinforcement? You don't receive reinforcement Sunday at 9 a.m. You do receive reinforcement Sundays at 11 a.m. And that reinforcement is the reason you start going on Sundays at 11 a.m. because that's when reinforcement's available. So why are you showing up on Sundays at 11 a.m.? Well, A, positive reinforcement. It's a little tricky because the 9 a.m. behavior is on extinction on Sunday, but extinction is going to decrease the behavior. So if the question said, why did you stop showing up on Sundays at 9 a.m.? Extinction might be a pretty good answer. But the question is asking, why did you start doing something? Why are you now showing up at 11 a.m. on Sundays? Well, that's due to the positive reinforcement of the library actually being open. You're not being negatively reinforced by showing up at 11 a.m. because the consequence is you get to go in the library, right? The library is now open. And you're not being punished here. Your behavior is on extinction at 9 a.m. because reinforcement is being withheld. And then your behavior is being positively reinforced at 11 a.m. on Sundays because when you show up at 11 a.m. on Sundays, you now get to go in the library. You get to get work done. So pretty tricky question, but you start showing up on Sundays at 11 a.m. instead because of positive reinforcement. You got to read very carefully and make sure you're answering what the question is asking, right? So not just what you read first, but what is the question specifically asking about? A parent tells Rachel, a behavior technician, that they've started giving their daughter 4 doses of vitamin B12 and B6 per day because they read an article that said this would reduce symptoms of ASD. What actions would be appropriate for Rachel to take? First, we know Rachel is a behavior technician. And as a behavior technician, your primary job, like we said earlier, is implementation and data collection. Now, you want to have good rapport with the parents. You want to have a relationship with the parents. It's going to help session. It's going to help progress. But you're not there to give expert advice or scientific advice. And it's not because you don't know or you're not capable. It's for 1, your protection, 2, the client's protection, and 3, your supervisor's protection. Because the supervisor is ultimately responsible for what happens here. So if this 4 doses of B12 and B6, let's just say it ended up being harmful, and Rachel said, oh, that's a great idea, well, that's going to be a very bad thing, not only for you, but also for the supervisor. So the rule of thumb is when asked questions about health and diet and these sort of things, you're always going to your supervisor first. And in this day and age, as a technician, this is going to come up. Parents try a lot of different things for their children out of the goodness of their heart because they want better for their kids. And even though they've read one article, that doesn't mean this is okay or not okay. So what does Rachel need to do in this situation? A, inform the parents that this is not an evidence-based practice. Even if Rachel knows that for sure, it's not Rachel's place to say. So Rachel should not do that. B, agree with the parents that this can reduce symptoms to maintain rapport. Rachel does not want to lie to the parents or try to pass it off as she knows just to maintain that rapport. Rachel should be very non-committal, right? She should just say okay or listen, but she should not agree one way or the other. It's not Rachel's place. What Rachel needs to do is C, let her supervisor know as soon as possible that the parent is trying this new strategy. Once she tells the supervisor will then tell Rachel what she cannot do, or what she needs to do. That is the proper chain of command. And then D, inform the ethics board of this possible ethical violation. The parents are not bound by our ethical code. The only people bound by our ethical code are those who are certified under the board. So the board would do nothing about this. They can't do anything about this. It's not their role. Rachel should simply let her supervisor know as soon as possible that the parent is trying this new strategy. Don't commit either way. Don't give her opinion either way. Listen, be respectful, and then tell her supervisor. Prior to using token economy relies on tokens and the backup reinforcers for effectiveness. What needs to be done in order to ensure the tokens will function as reinforcers? All right, kind of a strangely worded question. That's okay. If we get a question on the exam where the wording is off, we don't panic, right? We just figure out what the question is asking and then we attack the question. The question is just saying what needs to be done to make sure tokens will function as reinforcers. So all the other stuff doesn't really matter because as long as you know what we need to do to make tokens effective, you're going to be fine, right? And a token economy relies on tokens. So the tokens are what we are using as our generalized reinforcers, and we're rewarding our learners with tokens. And then they exchange the tokens for what we call backup reinforcers. So typically, or a lot of times, clients might exchange tokens for break. The tokens will be our generalized reinforcer. The break is the backup reinforcer. The backup reinforcer is what is earned in exchange for tokens. So how are we going to make those tokens function as reinforcement? A, tokens must be paired with backup reinforcers. Absolutely. Tokens only gain value when paired with actual reinforcement. Just like money. If you've ever talked to a very young kid, or even a kid maybe with a delay, and who has no concept of money, what it means is because that money hasn't been exchanged for anything yet. So that pairing is what gives the token value. Do we pick A and move on? No, we read all of our answer choices. B, backup reinforcers must be valuable to the learner. Absolutely, right? If that reinforcement isn't valuable, then the tokens start to lose their value. If you had $500 and 2 items to buy, but those 2 items weren't valuable to you, then that does you no good. We've got to make sure those backup reinforcers hold value. And then C, the exchange ratio of tokens to backup reinforcers should match the client's goals and needs. Absolutely, right? However many tokens it takes to earn the reinforcer should reflect the goal and the need of the client. And so what needs to be done is tokens must be paired, the backup reinforcers must be valuable, and that exchange ratio, in other words, 5 tokens for 1 backup reinforcer, must match the client's goals and needs. So what needs to be done in order to ensure the tokens will function as reinforcers? Well, D, all the above. If your goal was to remove a behavior and replace it with the new behavior, what type of trend would you want to see for the behavior you want to remove? We have another trend question. We asked a trend question a few weeks back, and there was a little confusion because someone said, well, when do we know when an increasing trend is good and when a decreasing trend is bad, or vice versa? And it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish. When we talk about an increasing trend, we simply mean the data path is going up. In other words, the behavior you're observing is increasing. Your measurement is increasing. Think of frequency. An increasing trend would just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That trend is increasing. Decreasing would be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so what you have to look at is, what is your goal? Our goal here is to remove a behavior and replace it. If we are looking at a trend for the behavior we want to remove, what kind of trend do you want? Well, you want a decreasing trend, of course, because if you start at 6, it's better if you go to 5 and then 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. You don't want to go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and see that behavior increase. So the type of trend you want to see for a behavior you want to remove is going to be a decreasing trend. For the behavior we'd replace the old behavior with, you'd want that behavior to increase, right? You want to start seeing that more and more, especially relative to the behavior you're trying to get rid of. So, what type of trend would you want to see for the behavior you want to remove? Well, you want a decreasing trend. Thank you for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Be sure and subscribe. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.